Right, back to last weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Give us a brief run through of your tourney from start to finish. You know, where you got your chips from, any key hands or anything like that.
Day one was the very first. I was all in the very first level actually. Wow. in day one. It wasn't cold, but I'd made a set of queens on. I made top set on the river, and it wasn't the nuts. There was a straight out, but it was quite the way the hand had played out. I was fairly sure I was ahead, and it was a really big pot. I ended up shipping when he checked it was on the river, and I wasn't cold, and within the first level I was up at like 15-16 grand.
Good shot.
And I pretty much stayed there until the lunch break, where I think I was still on around that amount. After lunch I picked up a couple of big hands. I picked up Ace King v Ace Queen on an Ace High flop, which got me paid, and I also picked up aces for the first time. It was one of them days where, you know, when you're raising with the Jack Nines and the King Tens, they're getting through, and you know, when I had the really big hands, you know, people were free betting us, and you know, it's just working out perfectly. You know, I played a big pot with aces after lunch, which took me over 25,000, and then the last couple of hours towards the end of day one, another couple of key pots where I played Ace 5 of clubs and a flop middle pair, and put a continuation bet, and the guy reshoved on us for not a lot more, and after my kind of trademark tank, you know, I eventually made the call, and you know, took down quite a big pot again, and it just seemed as if every time I was in a pot, you know, I had the best hand, and you know, I don't really remember losing a big pot, you know, really over the entire of day one, and you know, day two, the kind of only big pots I lost really were, I guess, on the final table. So day one, at the end of day one, I finished on as one of the chip leaders. I think I was second in chips going into day two.
You have about 66,000, didn't you?
Yeah, 66,000, that's right. So I went back on day two feeling very confident, but definitely, to answer your question, Steve, the two key hands I would say of my tournament was the first hand of day two. I sat down, as I've just said, second in chips, and I looked down, very first hand, two red aces. Put a standout raise in, and I got guy move all in on us with Ace King. My hand held up, and I went to over 100,000 within the first hand.
That's a great start to that too.
I was hoping, you know, I was thinking to myself, if I can get on the final table with 130,000, I'll be made up. After one hand of day two, I was almost on that amount. So, you know, I just tightened up and, you know, really played only big cards, you know, passed a lot of marginal hands, and when it got to the last 10, there was two tables of 5. It was 5-handed, short-handed poker and high blinds. It was pretty intense. I'd been quite passive with my big stack, wasn't really wanting to get involved, didn't feel the need to get involved, and it was past me in the small blind, and I had Ace King suited. I put in again a stand-up raise, and the big blind almost instantly shifted on us. I didn't give it too much thought before eventually calling it off. I mean, Ace King suited 5-handed is just such a big hand. The fact that he shipped on us so quickly as well, it didn't really feel as if it was going to be aces or kings. I really felt as if it was a weaker ace, and I probably hadn't crushed, and worst case scenario was a coin flip. He tabled 2 8s, and to be honest, I didn't really like the situation, and also what I hadn't realised was how much money he had behind him. He had really had a big stack. I flopped a straight draw, but then I turned my ace, and that was the last hand before the final table. I bust the lad and sat down at the final table with 357,000. So
wow.
The two key pots of day two was definitely when it was 10-handed, the Ace King v the 2 8s, and the very first hand of the day, which was the two aces versus Ace King.
Right. On to the final.
Yeah.
Most of the MPF were watching on AWOT. Just what would you feel for the final table? And obviously there was another MPF on there, Jambo.
That's right.
And a couple of well-known people, Dave Maudlin.
Yes.
But there was, I think, you were first or second in chips at the final?
I sat down at the final table, first in chips, and Don Mahoney also had a big stack as well. We had, between the two, I think over 50% of the chips in play, and the rest was spread out between the other players. My first big final table, Steve, so very nervous. I was delighted with my stack. I ended up with a great seat draw.
Yeah.
And, I was worried about, some of the bigger players, the bigger names on the final table, the likes of Dave Maudlin, who he's got, a really excellent poker CV, and, people like Jambo, who, he's kind of follows the tour a little bit, and he's obviously recognised as a good player. And to be fair, there wasn't a weak player on the final table. I mean, Ash Hussain was on the final table, which, as most people know, was the European world #1 poker player, formerly, and also I think he won the 2008 Champions GUKPT.
He did.
So, he was some player. So I was aware of the task I had in front of us. The rail at Teesside, for the Teesside lads was really big, and there was 3 Teesside guys on who had made the final table. I think Lee Danza, Dom Mahoney, and Dave Maudlin as well. So I could feel them breathing down my neck. I had a little bit of support from Waspy, the
Matters of Wasp.
Matters of Wasp, who was excellent for us. It really made us feel like.
He's great, isn't he? I mean, he railed me when I was in Leeds, and he certainly gives you a boost. Yeah,
but the final table, to be honest, Steve, I found it really tough. At one point, especially when I got short-handed, if I'm honest, I felt as if I was getting run over a little bit, and I could just see my stack going down, and I was just praying. I mean, when it got to the last 4, and we'd done a deal, and after the last 4, it was once it was down to the last 4, Don Mahoney really loosened up, and he was running over the table a bit, and I was dying for a hand to catch him. I didn't really want to 3-bet him with air, and I just couldn't find it. But eventually, I did. I found pocket queens and raised him. He shipped it on us with Ace-9. I called, flopped a set, and put myself back in the race. And felt really good.
Yeah, it was good watching, actually. I remember when you were down a 4-handed. The commentary at the time was saying that you've done a deal and now it's going to become a little bit of a shove fest, and because you're all taking roughly the same money, you'd probably be over within half an hour. It actually went on for probably 3 or 4 hours after you did the deal, and the play seemed to get tighter. I think, what was your mindset at that stage? Were you thinking, I'm going for the win?
I had the go for the win mindset the whole day. Earlier on in the day, I'd raised with 9-10 and called a chip with it, purely because I knew I was behind. I mean, it's hard to think 9-10's a front to a re-raise all in. But I wanted to win. I was getting the right price for the call. I had the stack. I had a big enough stack to risk the percentage of chips, what it was going to cost us. Final table time. Again, I called with King Queen against Dave Maudlin's Ace Queen, which was a huge pot. I've seen a lovely flop, but he had his ace on the turn.
There was a big whoop in everyone's house when the king hit.
I felt if I won that pot, it was all over. And again, it was, I've got a really good idea I'm behind, but it's the for the win mentality, and I was kind of just hoping that it was going to be, jacks or worse, and I was flipping, I didn't like to see, I wasn't getting the right price for a dominated hand, but things worked out all right in the end.
Oh, they did, definitely.